Welcome back. Now we just finished implementing jumping and now we're ready to create an item class. Now we're going to create a base item class and this will be designed for other classes to inherit from it. For example, we're going to want to make a weapon class because we don't want to just have the same weapon. We want to be able to swap weapons out for other weapons that we can find in the level. So let's get started by creating a new weapon class. Now in our C++ classes shooter folder, right-click and create new C++ class. And this will be an actor because it's simply an object in the world. Go ahead and click Next, and we're going to call our actor item. So this will be our base item class. Go ahead and click Create Class. Okay, here we are in Visual Studio with our new item class derived from actor. I'm going to right-click on the header tab and choose Close All but this. So that way we don't have a bunch of other tabs cluttering our area. Now I'm going to hit Control KO and that will open up the companion CPP file for this. So we have the item class. Now this is the base class. We're going to derive our weapon class from this class. So this only needs to have the very basics. One of the things we need is a box component for collision. I want this to have a collision component because when the character runs around and finds a weapon, I want to pop up some widget elements that show the name of the weapon, its rarity, how much ammo it has, things like that, just from looking at it, which means if we're going to look at it and result in a HUD element popping up, we need to be able to collide with it via a line trace. So we're going to add a collision box. Now remember, we have our public section for the constructor, and we have a protected section where most of our functions will go, and then we have this other public section where the tick function goes and other public functions. I'm going to create a private section underneath that where we're going to have our private variables, and most of our variables should be private. And beneath that private section, I'll have another public section, and this will be where we can put the getters and setters, which will be public, so that we can access our private variables through accessor functions. Now, in the private section, I'm going to add a new variable, and this will be a box component. So I'm going to forward declare it. It'll be a uBox component. It's a pointer, and we're going to call this collision box. Now I'm going to give this U property to expose it to blueprints, and I'm going to make this edit anywhere, blueprint read only. Don't want to be able to set the variable, but I do want to be able to edit its properties in the details panel. Now all items are going to have this collision box, so I'm going to give it a category, item properties. Now because this is a private variable and we're setting it to edit anywhere blueprint read only, we're going to have to give this the meta specifier. Meta equals parentheses allow private access equals, and in quotes, true. Okay, so we have our collision box. Let's give this a comment and we'll say line trace collides with box to show HUD widgets. Now, in addition to the collision box, all items are going to have a mesh. So we're going to create a skeletal mesh component because things like weapons typically are skeletal mesh components. A weapon typically has bones that allow you to move parts of the weapon. So this will be a uSkeletal mesh component called item mesh. And we'll make this a U property. And I'm going to make it visible anywhere, since we don't want to be able to set the actual variable. We'll make this blueprint read only, so we can't set it in blueprints either. And we'll give it the same category and meta specifier as the collision box. For the comment, we'll say skeletal mesh for the item. Now I'm going to actually move the skeletal mesh up just above the collision box, so that way it comes first. And I'm going to want this item mesh to be the root component. So over in item.cpp, we can create our item mesh. Item mesh equals, and we're going to call create default subobject. And this will be of type uSkeletalMesh component, and we'll give it a name, item mesh. And we want the item mesh to be the root, so we're going to call set root component and pass in item mesh to make item mesh the root. Next, we need to create the collision box. So collision box equals create default subobject of type uBoxComponent, and the text name for this will be collision box. Now collision box we're going to attach to the root component. So we're going to say collision box setup attachment, and we're going to attach it to item mesh. Now collision box is not recognized by default like uSkeletalMesh components are, so we need to include the header for uBoxComponent. If I pull up uBoxComponent here in the documentation, we see that the include is components/boxComponent. So I can just copy that and paste that include here in item.cpp. So now we have an item class, and it has a root component, that's the item mesh. It's of type skeletal mesh component, and it also has a collision box of type uBoxComponent that we're going to use for line traces so we can pop up widgets when we're looking at items in the world. In the next video, we'll create a weapon class based on this and continue by starting to script out the weapon item. See you in the next video.